Hello, everybody. I'm Jasmine Navarro, certified family coach, and I work with teenagers and I support parents both in educational institutions and companies. And as you know, every week I interview different experts who make a difference on people's lives. And today I have a very special guest, Mark, who I'm super excited to talk to. Mark, thank you very much for coming. And can you tell us a bit about who you are and what you do?
Thank you, Jasmine. Yeah, I'm delighted to be here. So my name is obviously Mark Carolan. I work as a coach and a public speaker. And a lot of the work that I do from a coaching perspective, an individual perspective, is one-on-one with a lot of busy professionals, people who are trying to get back and control their lives. Lives have spun out of control an awful lot over the last number of years. I was one of those people myself at some point. And so my job is to help them kind of figure out what's going on, what's important, why is this happening to me, develop proper coping mechanisms, and get back in charge of the life they really want to live.
Wow, that sounds hugely powerful. Brilliant. No, thank you so much. And you chose the title Coming Home to Yourself, which sounds powerful too. But can you tell us a little bit about why you chose that and where this has come from and how it impacts your work?
Yeah, well, I suppose where does it come from is probably the best way to describe why I chose that, because it's kind of how my philosophy on coaching has evolved over the time I've been coaching. You came to this space, and as you know yourself, as someone who coaches, Jasmine, you're always learning within the space, and you're always developing your understanding based on who you work with and how people, because every client teaches you at the same time as you're trying to help a client. And I've kind of realized, based on my own life experience as well, and my working world experience, and kind of what I've learned in the coaching space, is that an awful lot of us are just kind of divorced from who we really are. We're strangers to ourselves a little bit. And because of that, then our life doesn't fit, because we're not quite doing what we need to do, and we're trying to fit into the world. And I think we need to stop trying to fit into the world and step back and figure out what we want and need, and then make the world work for us and suit what we need to get out of the world instead. And I think that's kind of what it is, because it's once you come home to yourself, then you're starting to move in from the right space.
Oh, wow. So okay, there was a lot there. So that was very interesting that you said about we're divorced to ourselves. What does that mean? You mean like we're just completely disconnected? We actually hate ourselves?
Yeah, well, there's so many aspects to it, Jasmine. I think it starts even at a very young age. Like, even when you think about when you first go to school, you try to fit in to school, and then you go to another school trying to fit in. Then you go to university, you go to begin to work, and you're always trying to fit into all these spaces. But the problem is, every time you're fitting in, you're losing a bit of who you really are, and you're becoming a bit more of a stranger to yourself in all that fitting in, rather than meeting the world as who you are all the time. Like, you'll find with people, the more and more they fit in and the more they lose of themselves, it's just a shadow of themselves that they're existing within, and they have to play these roles. And it goes so much further than that. It's all about the roles that we adopt, that we feel we need to play all the time. Like, I'll give you an example. A perfect one was a lady I was coaching, and she was talking about how annoyed she was because she was always being the mother, because she had adopted that mother role and everyone was expecting this of her. But she's like, but I'm here too. Where am I in this? And you lose yourself if you live through the role that you're playing all the time, as opposed to where am I and who am I in this space. And that's the reason why we need to kind of pull back and kind of come back home to ourselves, because we need to drop those and drop these things we've built that try and protect us, and start being what we need to be.
Yeah. And when you were saying about playing the roles, do you mean like we all each have one role that we play? Like you mentioned, your client was the role of a parent, or do you mean we can literally play different roles in different situations?
Different roles. There's so many roles that we play. Like, if I look at myself, right? So I'm a father, I'm a husband, I'm a son, let's say I'm a reader, I'm a cyclist. They're all different things that we identify with. But I'm not any one of those things specifically. They're just roles I play. But we tend in this world to have a habit of being too much of a role, getting caught up with my role. This is my role, this is what I have to play. But you don't, especially if that role is not who you really are. And there's a danger in that. But it goes a lot further. Like, when I talk about fitting in, and then there's so much that we develop where we build up barriers and we create beliefs around things for ourselves. A lot of stuff that we do when we're younger. And like, if you create a belief that I'm not good enough, I'm not strong enough, and maybe you did it because 10 years ago you were trying to do something and it wasn't right for you, and so you convinced yourself that you weren't strong enough, you weren't good enough. Perfect, served you at the time. Here you are 10 years later wanting to do it, and you can't do it because you have a belief system built up. So that belief system is blocking you from being who you really are. It's preventing you from being yourself, and that's holding you back all the time. And that's the kind of things that we need to break on down and go through and change our mindset around, so that we can actually be who we need to be.
Wow. Yeah, no, you're right. And I guess, let me just say hi, Albie and Dolly. Is it Albie and Dolly? Hi, how are you? Yes, no, yeah, it's very complex, isn't it? So you mentioned, there's so many points to this, like you said. But like, so I guess, so we create these roles, I guess, to serve us and to protect us. So maybe, are they created from fear in the first place?
A huge amount of them, from fear, from shame, from I think there's a huge part of this that is vulnerability, Jasmine, as well, and our inability to be vulnerable because we're afraid of the shame. So we're afraid of how people might judge us. So many of the reasons why we are where we are is because we're protecting ourselves all the time from shame, from trauma and stuff, from different things that have happened in our life. And the way I'd nearly describe it is, we've created a life where we're living here. We've all these blocks and barriers and everything built up in front of this. We need to get back to here, though. But because we live from this space here, it's not ourselves, it's not our life that we're living. And so we're disjointed, so we're unhappy, and we can't figure out what's wrong. We don't know what to do about it because we're here. We're not here. You know, when you live back from your center, from your core, from what really matters to you, well, then life makes an awful lot more sense from that space. It's a job to get back there, because you have to do the work in order to get back there. You have to challenge the assumptions you've built up. You have to look at why you've always been doing the things you're doing. Look at the stuff that doesn't serve you anymore. We've so much of that in our life all the time. And then slowly we can start pulling these back and, well, let's get rid of that. Let's get rid of that. That doesn't work anymore. What do you really think about this? What do you want to achieve? And start pushing into what you want to achieve.
Yeah, no, yeah, definitely. And do you think as well, we put up all these barriers and protections and our belief system. Do you think as well, like you mentioned, the work on yourself, and that is it, isn't it? It's working on yourself. But do you feel like as well, when we work on ourselves, oh my God, I've just lost what I was going to say. But something about when we work on ourselves, you said something and I've just lost my train of thought. But it's also about what we're scared of as well, like processing those emotions, because we've got to change our limiting beliefs and the beliefs that are not serving us now. But also, I think that's can be really hard to do as well, because when we do that, we have to face and feel a lot of emotions, don't we? Because sometimes those beliefs actually stop us from feeling uncomfortable emotions that we don't want to feel. So part of working on ourselves is, I believe, like really processing those uncomfortable emotions.
Absolutely, it can be. And one of the reasons you hit the nail on the head there, one of the reasons why we don't want to work on ourselves is because we don't want to have to deal with these things, because we protected ourselves from it all the time. Like I said, so we're a stranger to ourselves, because our real self is through that hard emotion, through processing that thing. And some of us will never ever deal with these things. And we can go into often all sorts of directions about why we don't process and how we avoid it. So then we have our coping mechanisms where we can use drink, or alcohol, drugs, all sorts of stuff, or anything, TV, food, all these different things, to avoid ever having to actually process and deal with these difficult things. Yeah. And if we develop the awareness around it, right, then we realize we're making a decision here that the reason why I'm doing these things is because I don't want to deal with this and I don't want to confront that. But if I do deal with this, if I do change these things, well, then suddenly life will be different. And the unease that I feel, the sense of loss that I feel, being stuck in a rut that people feel, that will begin to go away, because I'm not blocking myself off from actually moving on anymore.
Yeah, oh, definitely. I mean, I completely agree. But I think, but it's not, I don't think it's something, I mean, maybe it is possible to do by yourself, but I think you do really need, or you can benefit from working with somebody, can't you? I mean, now I feel like I can process emotions myself, but before I had any training, coaching, I wouldn't have had a clue where to start and process emotions. I wouldn't have even known what that meant, So what do you think is the first step?
Yeah, I like that. That's a great question, and I fully agree with you that it's very difficult to start. Look, at the same time, we're all on a journey, you know, through what we do, and some people have got incredible ability to actually work through some of this stuff themselves, and maybe it can be stuff that's not too difficult, or they're ready to do it and they're ready to grow, and something becomes a catalyst for them to make these changes. But it can be very difficult because, you know, we've let ourselves off for so long in life that it's very hard to turn around and challenge ourselves. It's very hard to listen up, Mark. You know, enough of this now. Like, you know, because we don't have the awareness of it, because we're blinded to these things. We all have our blind spots all the time, and other people might be able to see them for us. And maybe that's where coming into the coaching space in particular, I think, is very beneficial. Like for me, I started working with a coach in order to try and develop as well. And then I think too, when you're in that space where you can speak to someone and the person, there's no judgment in that space. So therefore you're actually allowed to explore yourself. And rather than if you try and do it yourself, you'll judge yourself. If you try and do it with a friend or a family member, you know, there's always an emotional attachment in some sort. People will wonder, how does it affect them? You know, when you're sitting opposite a coach, the coach doesn't care how it affects them. The coach is like, well, what does that mean? How does that affect you? So therefore you're free to actually explore this, explore in a good space, to allow yourself to bring it into the light. And then maybe you can let it go and you can change it and you can amend it in a safe space.
Oh, wow. Yeah, definitely. I think, I mean, and I think it's really underrated, isn't it? Because just that feeling of feeling safe, having that safe space can just, well, that is the first step, isn't it? Feeling safe and comfortable and ready to start exploring, like you said, because it is exploring and it's a long journey. But what was I going to say? Like you mentioned, coming home to yourself. So how do you, like in your words, like how do you know when you've reached yourself?
Oh, wow. I think we're going down a philosophical route here that could take days. Okay. To be philosophical about it, there's a journey here in life. Here on this life, there's only one final destination in this journey. And anytime you think you've conquered everything, you're wrong, because the world will throw something else at you. But you might learn to a certain point. But to bring it back to more simply how we can understand where we move through things. I'll give you a personal example. I suppose my world, I used to work in the corporate world for a long time, Jasmine. And like for 21 years, and I often joke, after a week I knew it wasn't for me, but 21 years later I finally left. Wow. I actually I won a Toastmasters competition last week about humorous speeches. I wrapped it all around that concept of not knowing what I want to be when I grow up, and that kind of way of thinking about it, and how you simply get lost into this space because you get used to getting paid, you get used to all the other things that are going on. But for me, towards the end of it, I knew my values were going in this direction and my life was going in this direction. And like, you know, if you keep going in those two directions, like I'm leaving the screen here, you know, something's has to give. And that's the problem. I think an awful lot of midlife crisis, an awful lot of breakdowns from people going in the wrong direction against their values. So how you know that you're coming home to yourself is you have to look at what your values are, because your values are not going to come over here and meet your life. It's not going to happen. Like, especially, you know, I was working in the corporate world and I joked that I was making rich people richer, which eventually wasn't going to align with any value I had. Whereas you have to meet your values instead. And like, you can meet it through work. You have to find a way to honor them, whether that's through your personal life or your professional life. You have to find a way to honor them as best as you can. And when you start to honor them, you know intimately, you know intrinsically to yourself that you're in the right space, because you don't have to second guess yourself. You don't have to correct yourself. And I think to bring it even further is, you meet people in this world and they're looking for a purpose and they're looking for their mission, like, and they're looking externally, they're looking at here and they're seeing what other people do and thinking, oh, that's great, I admire that. But where you'll find your purpose and your mission is at the end of your values. Find your values, live on your values, honor your values. At the end of your values is your mission and your purpose and what you're supposed to be doing with yourself in this life.
Wow. No, yeah, completely agree. And I guess even finding your values, I mean, there's a bit of work there, isn't there? Because sometimes we don't, maybe we know what they are, but we don't know what they are consciously. Because I remember when I first learned my values, I mean, actually talking about them out loud, saying them out loud and realizing them, what they were, I was just like, oh, wow, that completely makes sense, you know, but I hadn't ever been asked that question before, you know, or had done exercises, you know, to realize. So, okay, brilliant. So what else was I going to say? So who do you work with? What kind of people come to you? You know,
So the majority of people I work with are people who are very busy, they're stressed out, they're wondering where to go in life. Because I'm a certified personal leadership and executive coach. So I work as a life coach and executive coach. I'm also a certified well-being coach as well, and I do a lot of well-being work with people because I think that's necessary. Sometimes it's necessary to pull yourself back, develop the well-being techniques, and then bring yourself into the space you need to be.
Yes.
So it's a lot of people who are professionals who are very busy in life. Too many plates. Remember, it's an 80s thing, Jasmine. Do you remember the plate spinners that used to be on TV?
Yeah.
And that's what an awful lot of us are like. We're running around trying to keep all those plates spinning all the time, you know, and yet actually some of those plates don't need to be spinning. We need to actually reevaluate our life a little bit and break those down. So for me, it's trying to help those people who are busy professionals get back in touch with what they need to be, get back in touch with their life, because their working life for a lot of people has taken over their personal lives and they don't know where the line of demarcation is. There's no boundaries anymore. Their families are struggling. It's just pulling that back.
No, that's amazing that you said about the boundaries, because I was going to mention about burnout and boundaries. Yeah, I think they are the two things that keep coming up, you know, with my clients. You know, they're feeling burnt out and then we realize there's no boundaries put in place. So how do you think all of this is connected to coming home to yourself as well, like setting the boundaries?
That's it. It's setting the boundaries, what you need and what you want. And so when I speak to people who are coming home to yourself, I love the idea of it, and I think it's important that when people see it and think about it, they go, "That's what I want. That's what I need," and you kind of feel empowered by it. People always ask, "Well, but how do I do this?" Okay, that's a great question. How do I do this? How do I come home to myself? We spoke a little bit about trying to understand. It's about raising awareness for a start, trying to understand the role, the beliefs that you've got there. But I think a couple of very profound and yet absolutely basic questions that we can start with to begin this journey. And the first one is asking ourselves, how are we? It's a very simple question. But we hear it all the time, but we can't answer it because it's too big a question. The Irish poet and philosopher John O'Donoghue used to say, if somebody answered the question, you could be there for 24 hours listening to the answer. We're a multitude of things. So to ask that question, you know, we all dismiss it with a quick grand, I'm fine, you know, or I'm okay. We just dismiss it because I'm not here to answer that question, and it's a greeting. If you break it down to how are you emotionally, how are you mentally, how are you physically, you know, how are you spiritually, and we start breaking this question down, then we can really take a look at all these different aspects of our life. And then we know where we're out of tune with ourselves because of these things. And that's a good way to start. And the second point that I would always jump into is ask yourself, where are you? Where are you right now in your life? Because wherever you are, then you're going somewhere. You're heading in a direction. And if you don't know where you are, you're still going to end up somewhere. And if you don't change that direction, then you're in trouble. But if you can just do the slightest change now, it means that your direction is slightly changed all the time. So once you answer that question of where are you, then you know what you can do. And then it goes further than that too. Like it becomes, where are you in terms of your connection with people around you? Where are you most importantly in terms of your connection with yourself? Because that's the most important relationship of any relationship that you ever develop. And you cannot begin to come home to yourself until you actually begin to strengthen that relationship with yourself.
Yes. And like, and I think you're right. And if you don't know where you are, well, I mean, that's the first step as well, isn't it? Knowing you got to start somewhere. So where are you now? But when you say where are you now, do you mean like how do you feel in different areas of your life? Because you know the wheel of life. Like, I mean, I always do that with clients, and you know that is like, where are you now? Basically, how do you feel in different areas of your life? Is that what you mean? How do you feel?
That to an extent, but I also because the coming home to yourself piece for me, that starts at a point of self-compassion. And where are you? So I like to go from where are you now in that physical way that you can see your life, as to where are you with this connection piece and this connection to yourself. Because like, if you look at it from, if you have a relationship with someone, if you're in a very strong relationship, then you know you can make mistakes and you will be given forgiveness. You can grow in that space with someone as they grow with you as well, because you're allowed to grow in that space. But if you don't have a strong connection with yourself, you won't allow yourself to grow. You admonish yourself for all your mistakes. You won't forgive yourself for anything. And you have to develop this sense of self-compassion so that you develop this connection with yourself, so you can allow yourself to make mistakes. You can forgive yourself for the mistakes you've made. And that's the space you can move on from, because if you don't have that self-compassion for yourself, you can't grow, you can't change.
Wow. Oh my God, that's amazing. I love that. Yeah, I know that. But now the way you've just said it, it just, oh, wow. I love, yeah, that's so important. In fact, that's another first step, isn't it? It's like they're all so important, but I think self-compassion, I think that's, for me, I feel like that's the most important, actually.
I'll give you a very simple example. I was actually writing a post about it because of my birthday on Friday, and I was going to mention it on this post. And there's this lady, I was coaching her in a session last Friday, and she's turning 40, and she was dreading turning 40. She said, I can't. She said, like, I want to delete my Facebook in case people start wishing me a happy birthday. And I was like, well, hold on a second. Like, what does that even say about how you're feeling? Like, and you could see this dread on her, because she goes, look at all the requirements, all the societal pressures of I'm a woman who's 40, I don't have children, and whatever else, and all those other pressures. And we had to stop her looking at that aspect of things and go, well, wait a second, where are you in this? What have you achieved in your life? And we've been through over the past, I've been working for 2 months, and all this amazing stuff that she'd achieved, and how she'd begin to understand her values. And her values were in having adventures, in celebrating life, and being on the edge, you know. And she began to realize that this is not the stuff that I want, the societal pressures of what I should have at 40. But yet, the idea of a birthday at 40 was putting her under pressure. But then she was able to look back, and we began to look at her achievements, what she wanted out of life, where she was in life. She was able to say, well, actually, do you know what? It is worth celebrating my 40th birthday. You know, it is worth being there, because it's worth it, because she had to move from that space of putting herself under pressure for not being where other people think she was, to go, you know what, being self-compassionate with herself and saying, do you know what? And, excuse my Irish, feck it, I'm 40. I can celebrate it. I've achieved so much in my life to this point. So now, instead of deleting her Facebook account, which is a very dramatic step to take, she's actually just going to celebrate herself that day, you know, and enjoy it for herself, because she sees the other side of the thing. And that's the shift from not being good enough into a sense of self-compassion for yourself. And that's it, kind of as an example.
Wow. But it sounds like even she might have actually been happy with herself, but she was so sort of maybe disconnected with herself and took on the beliefs of other people around her. Yeah. And so she thought that's what she felt about herself as well, but she didn't. Is that what you mean?
Completely. Yeah. And not even took on the beliefs of other people around, took on the role in society of someone who's 40 and what they should have achieved, what they're supposed to have done by the time that they are this space in life.
Right. Okay.
That's a role. There's beliefs in that. There's a mindset in that. All these other negative things, but it's not your life. If it's not your life, then don't live it. You know, you can only live your life for you. Yeah. And so you're right. She had begun to really understand herself, because look, over the space of coaching, she'd gone from initially thinking she should have all these things to realizing she didn't even want these things in the first place. So why did she have them? But then she was thrown again by the number, which just goes to show you the example of how much societal pressure is on us to be a certain way. And if I bring that back to, you mentioned burnout there, I think a huge example and reason for a lot of those burnout is because we feel we should be working harder. We need to be in the office. We need to be doing more. We need to be better. We need to be all these other things. And do we? Do we really? Because what's it costing us to do all these things? What's it costing us to put ourselves into that space, as opposed to doing what you need for you at the time? And if people are going to judge you, people are always going to judge you. And the sooner you learn to not care what people say about you, well, then the sooner you're free in life.
I know. And I don't know why it's such a tough thing. Well, it has been definitely tough for me. I mean, I still sometimes worry about what people think now, but not nowhere near as much as I did before. But I am getting to the point where it's just, I don't give a damn. But, you know, you can spend what I have spent most of my life worrying about what other people think. And it's just, like you said, I mean, they're going to think things anyway. We're never going to know what's going on in their mind. But I was going to say something, but I lost track again. But yeah.
I think on that point, Jasmine, we think people are thinking about us, but people are actually thinking about what we're thinking about them, which is much more realistic. You know, no one's actually thinking about anyone else. We're all just thinking about ourselves and what other people are thinking about us. It's an extraordinary thing to realize, But it's like somebody was asking me this. I was giving a talk a few weeks ago, and someone was asking me, I can't remember the question they posed, but it kind of made me bring up this example. When I first started out as in this coaching world, a year and a half ago or more, and those people said to me, "Oh, it's great! I can't believe that's perfect for you. It's amazing for you." But then I met a friend of mine, and he told me about this other person. I said, "Oh, why is he doing that? He can't do that. Him of all people." And I said, "Wait a second, And instead of all these people who told me I can do that and that's perfect for you, all I thought about was the one person who told me doing that. And it made me so I was thinking about it for a while, and then I said to myself one day, why is that in your head? Like, what's going on there?
Yes.
And then I started looking at it and examining it. Why was I thinking that? And there's a number of reasons, right? Obviously, the human condition to be liked by everyone. We don't want to be judged by anyone in a bad way. But I was like, what can I do about this? And then I realized, and we talk about roles here, this person who was speaking about me had me pegged in this space in their world. And suddenly I had done something that put me out here. It's like, no, you can't do that. You need to get back in your box. Their judgment needing to put me back in my box. And it made me realize what they were doing. And then I was like, wait a second, because it's just a reminder, because I spoke to somebody else the other day, and they were talking about a butcher they knew and a lady who was a cleaner. And the cleaner is now doing Bob Proctor talks, and she's a Bob Proctor advocate. And she's like, how are you doing that? You're a cleaner, and all my husband's doing too, but he's a butcher, and it's like we peg people in these little things and we judge them then in the back of that. But they're not those people. We're not those things. We're not those roles that everyone else applies to us, and we're not those roles we apply to ourselves, because we're constantly in evolution. So the whole point on the judgment thing is people are judging us from their perspective, from what they want us to be and they expect us to be, because in some ways we make them feel uncomfortable by being more than they think we should be. That's not our problem. Every judgment somebody gives you is their problem. None of it is our problem. Our problem is how we judge ourselves. And that brings the whole back to that personal connection. It's our problem is how we judge ourselves. And if we judge ourselves negatively, we can't change, we can't grow, we can't be what we need to be.
You're right. And how we respond to that. Like, if we're triggered or something, then we've got something to work on. And I love the question that you asked, what can I do about this? It's such a powerful question. So you already took sort of control and responsibility for, okay, this is something I don't know that you needed to deal with, but then you realized it wasn't actually anything to do with you. So I think it's awareness again and asking ourselves the right questions.
But it's interesting too, right? It just goes to show you the benefit of all these things, right? I love the philosophy of win or learn. So we have this idea that life is binary, because it's ones and zeros, but it's not at all. It's win or learn, I think, is the best attitude. So that example for me, there was the judgment and me feeling, oh my God, why am I being judged here? But now I use it as an example of positivity. So what that person gave me was their judgment. And what I've taken from it is learning and examples and something I can talk about. So it just goes to show you that the negative things that other people give you, you can take whatever people are giving you and transform it into what you learn from it all the time. And it proves the benefit.
Yes. And always, do you think if somebody is judging you, like you said, trying to put you into a box because it's making them feel uncomfortable, is it just exactly how they talk to themselves about themselves?
I don't think it's always like that. I think sometimes it can be, but I think it's because we don't like change in our world, and we like things to remain the same. So when people see people, they say that you are the average of the 5 people you surround yourself. And I think what that means is, if you surround yourself with people who want to who don't have ambition and who don't want to change or don't want to grow, then they'll always judge you to try and keep you with them. Either it can be subconscious. They may not even be conscious of doing it, but they don't want to see people get above that. Where if you surround yourself with 5 people who are changing the world, well, then either they don't want you because you're not ready to change the world, or you'll change the world with them because that's the space you're in. And it's just you're feeding off that energy. So I think for people who are judging you, they may not know it, and they may not know they're judging you, but they just want to keep you in a space that makes them feel comfortable.
Everything the same, because they're keeping themselves in their comfort zone. They want to keep you in their comfort. So it's all
Oh, wow. It's like jazz. I bring it to another thing. I met someone. I was about 2 or 3 years ago, and I was talking to them. And after a couple of minutes, they said to me, "Oh, you've changed," and I thought, that's what I'm supposed to do. I haven't seen this person in 10 years. Thinking, of course I've changed. If I hadn't changed, well, that would be really, really bad if I hadn't changed at all. You're supposed to change. That's the point to life, is you're supposed to grow and change and move on with what you've got going on.
You want to move, otherwise you're stuck. If you don't move, you're stuck, aren't you?
Yeah, completely.
And hi, Sienna. And hi, Tez. So taking control of what's best for you is necessary for your life. And your life, you're cool, simple.
Yeah.
Interesting. 100%. Yes. But like you said, the awareness, and this is what I mean, this ongoing awareness, it helps you with your life. It helps you see how you can respond to other people, and you don't have to take things personally and be triggered. You know, it's a whole life-changing, it's life-changing, isn't it?
It's completely. And where, if I can read it too, when we talk about the self-compassion, the need for that, a huge part of this journey is we spend our life battling against our ego and battling against these blocks that we've created for ourselves, and hence we have this dis-ease with who we are and dis-ease with where we are in life, because we're not happy, because we're battling against these things. And I spoke earlier about allowing yourself to be compassionate for yourself, because I think allowance is one of the most important things. Instead of fighting with the ego, just allow ourselves to be ourselves. Just kind of let it go, because the ego is just there to protect us. We go, you know what, you've done your work here. Thanks for protecting me. I'm going to just go back and allow myself to be who I need to be. Because that's the thing. It's about allowing ourselves to be who we are, rather than continuing to fight against it. Fight against what we don't need to be anymore.
Oh, I love that. Allowing is so important. And actually today, I was talking to somebody about that, and about allowing. We were talking about allowing them to feel what they want to feel. They'd buried their feelings for so long. It's just allowing. And I think allowing is such a key word. But we've run out of time, Mark. But I could literally talk to you all day. So before we go, would you like to tell us what would you like to say to sum this up? Anything else? And also tell us about you.
Well, I think for anyone listening and for people listening, you know, everyone knows if they're in the right space right now for where they need to be in life. We know that intrinsically. But also there's another part to that. Maybe you're not ready to move on from that space right now, because I'm always saying everyone needs a coach, but everyone's not ready for a coach. You know? You're ready to move on from that space right now. Well, then it's time to move on. Don't wait any longer, because life's not waiting for you. One of the reasons why I get into this world is because I was sitting here one night, Jasmine, and I was working away. It was 11 o'clock at night. I was in this corporate world again. And I just had this epiphany. I said to myself, if I don't stop this, and my father, he passed away at 57 years old. And I'm thinking, if I don't stop this, what's my future? Is this my life till I retire? Do we even get to retire? What is ahead of me?
Yes, exactly.
People always say, you know, it's like that line that it's the best time to plant a tree was 30 years ago, but the second best time to plant it is today. So if you know you need to make changes in your life, well, what are you waiting for?
Exactly. What are you waiting for? Yeah. No, very, very powerful words. Thank you so much, Mark. And how can people find you?
You will find me on LinkedIn, on Facebook or Instagram, and even sometimes on TikTok at Mark Carolan Coaching. On my website, of course, is Mark Carolan Coaching at darcis.com.
Brilliant. So you can even write it in the comments on LinkedIn as well. But thank you so much, Mark. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I hope we can talk again very soon.
Absolutely, Jasmine. I think it's lucky that this is cut to a certain time, but we could be here till tomorrow. It's been a pleasure.
And thank you, everybody, for watching. I will see you again next week.